So today we discussed the advantages and disadvantages of free market economy. Remember, free market economy is one that is where the government presence is very limited. The government is only there to sort of make sure that the property rights are sort of respected through the legal system. Otherwise, we say the government has no role to play in this one. And as a result of this, there could be many advantages we'll soon see, but there are also disadvantages that will happen when you don't have a government to manage the economy from a central perspective. So first advantage of a free market economy is that in a free market economy, it functions automatically. You know, there is consumers and buyers who are making decisions, and therefore there is no need for the government to be there. So there's no costly and complex bureaucracy. Bureaucracy means government functions to be there to coordinate economic decisions. So what, how, and for whom to produce is basically answered through the market forces of demand and supply. The fact that there's no government means no salaries for government, no costs of government, no wrong decisions of government, so on and so forth. So this becomes an advantage that it's an automatic kind of a system rather than a system that is managed by people or individuals. Make sense? The second big advantage of a free market economy that is to be seen is the fact that it responds very quickly to changes in demand and supply. What do we mean by this? So as soon as you will see, let's say, demand goes up, as soon as you see demand goes up, you will see the price to go up. And when the demand goes up, because people are demanding more of that good, making the price of the good to go up, producers will respond very quickly. So producers will respond very quickly, and that will make sure that the supply will also go up. So this is a system where there is quick demand and supply that is taking place, that is improving the market, that is making the market to respond very quickly to the consumer needs. Make sense? Any questions before we move on? In a command economy, by the way, even if people need something, we'll soon see, it's the government that is responding to the demand of people, of individuals. So it might not be as quick as we want to. Make sense? Are we good to move on? Any questions? We also notice that it's a very highly competitive market. There are a lot of firms that are in competition with each other. And if there is competition, we'll soon see that there's no one who has a great market power. In other words, if there is competition, there will be no monopoly. And the fact that there will be no monopoly and therefore many firms, this competition could be what we call healthy competition. And the healthy part of the competition is this, that the firms are trying to keep their prices down and also act as an incentive for firms to become more efficient. So competition between firms could be good because then firms will try to become as good as possible as compared to other firms, and not only try to become as good as possible, but also make sure that they are try to keep the prices low. So in this economic system, competition could be a main advantage because consumers can have low prices or affordable goods. And this, to build on this point, there's also a possibility that firms are kind of innovating and producing high quality products as well. So consumers can have low prices, high quality products. And the reason is simple for this is because they have an incentive. They have an incentive here because if they don't do this, they fail to do this, they are very likely to be driven out of business by more efficient firms. A good example of this is how Nokia was a market leader, but the fact that Nokia was not able to quickly innovate, they ended up losing the market share from a market leader to someone who's almost no one, is a story where you do not innovate and therefore you lose out. Ryan has a very good question. He's saying, wouldn't the absence of government lead to the formation of monopoly? And exactly, Ryan, when we look at disadvantages, we'll discuss this. We will discuss this. We are saying right now, Bilal, I'm going to also add the point here. What you're asking me is that we say this: if there's competition, then there's going to be good stuff going on. If there's competition, then there will be lower prices, there will be more products, there will be more R&D, there will be innovation and so on, and there will be a lot of efficiency to be seen through competition. So competition becomes like a very big sort of central theme around which a free market economy operates. But does it happen all the time? And the answer is maybe not. And that's what I'm going to see very soon. I want to show you guys that doesn't really happen all the time. Are we good? Does that make sense? Okay, another important point, guys, to note is the fact that self-interest is the main motive in this economic system. Self-interest basically means that everyone is trying to maximize their own benefit. This individuals maximizing their own benefit would mean, as a society, we'll also be maximizing our benefits, which means that if everyone tries to be as efficient as possible, then we can actually tackle the problem of scarcity by using our resources efficient, and that also in line with consumers' wishes. So the idea goes is that the self-interest, where everyone tries to maximize their own benefit, means if each and every one of us try to be maximizing our own benefit, then the problem of scarcity can be tackled very well. Does that make sense? So we will end up tackling the problem of scarcity very well because of the fact that in this economic system, we have individuals who are trying to make sure that they maximize their own self-interest. Make sense? So in a way, this economic system, which is based on self-interest, which is based on maximization of individual interests, can be good, because if everyone is trying to basically maximize their own self-interest, then as an economy, we can do the same thing. Make sense, guys? Bilal, we were saying in the last point that, like everyone is trying to maximize their own interest. If self-interest is the main motive, this means that we can tackle the problem of scarcity really well, because scarcity is unlimited wants limited resources. So limited resources will be very well spent, efficiently spent, if everyone is trying to do a good job in terms of maximizing their own self-interest from the resources that they own. That's the point we're making. Okay. Now let's look at the disadvantages, because while we're talking about a lot of advantages, there are some serious disadvantages of this economic system, which makes this economic system to be undesirable sometimes. And you've heard about how everyone talks about how capitalism is bad, and free market economy actually promotes capitalism. Capitalism is basically where everyone is trying to sort of maximize their own interest, and therefore they may end up being too selfish. They may end up, there could be a culture of greed. There could be other negative outcomes that can come about, which we'll talk about in 1 minute. So competition between firms sometimes is often limited. And this is where I think Ryan's point was that what if competition is limited? And because the possibility of competition being limited is very likely here as well. And the reason is because there's no government to begin with. If there's no government to begin with, then this means a few giant firms may dominate an industry. And this lack of competition can lead to higher prices, large profits, and even exploitation of consumers. How can a small firm become a large firm? I mean, we've seen many examples, like, for example, Microsoft started from, let's say, from a very small company to become one of the largest, richest company of the world. Similarly, Apple is another story. A lot of these companies, from a humble beginning to like a giant, means that there is a possibility that you can dominate an industry if you do good work, if you keep on sort of keep on innovating, keep on giving good products, you could become a market leader. And then you can actually even charge higher prices. You can make large profits, and consumers can be exploited. And that becomes a situation where there is a need for government intervention. But the problem is there is no government to begin with. There is no government to begin with, and that's the problem. That problem would mean that in this scenario, we could run into some serious issues. Exactly, Toyota in Pakistan is an example of one company which has one of the largest market share, and it's probably could argue this. Some people could argue this, that they're not doing a good job. Toyota across the world versus Toyota Pakistan might have a very different performance. Second point is this that when you have monopoly power, could be a lack of competition. So, guys, in advantages, we were saying, like there will be basically competition, but now I'm saying there will be lack of competition. What do we mean by this? The idea is this, that if there is monopoly power, then there is lack of competition, and if there is lack of competition, then there will be high profits, and also there will be no incentive for firms to be efficient. In other words, what we're saying is this, that the lack of competition can lead to inefficiency. This is a point that we're making. This lack of competition can lead to inefficiency, can be a serious problem. We call it sometimes, there's a term we use for this kind of thing, which is called X inefficiency. A lot of times, like we blame K Electric, for example, or we blame, for example, public utilities, that they are inefficient to begin with because there is lack of competition. Make sense? And so if there's no competition, we could run into these kind of issues. I agree with you, Bilal. We are not using our resources efficiently if few firms are controlling and trying to exploit consumers. Another important point, and this is from an individual perspective, guys, we say consumers are sovereign. We say consumers have a lot of power in free market economy. But can I ask you guys is that, uh, do you have more power, or do you think a guy who is more poor than you or poorer than you will have more power? Who has more power? The one with resources and wealth, or the one with less wealth, or the one who's poor? And the answer to this is that those who have money are more powerful, because those who have money are more sovereign. Those who have money can make more decisions. So the idea goes this, that because in this economic system, there's no government, there is an unequal distribution of wealth. This unequal distribution of wealth means consumers are not sovereign. Why? Because when there is unequal distribution of wealth, they might not be, consumers might not have the ability to buy. If they don't have the ability to buy, nobody is going to make a good for them. Why? Because you don't have the ability to pay, nobody will give you the good, and therefore nobody will make the good for you. So the idea goes this, that because power and property are unequally distributed, you run into these issues of consumers not being sovereign to begin with. Sovereign means independent, sovereign means powerful to make their own decisions, but they are not able to do so. Do we get that? Does that make sense? Okay, then comes this whole idea of some some of these firms can be what we call socially undesirable. The idea is this, that if you are a firm who is basically making chemical, and let's say you are polluting the environment, is there anyone to check you? Is there anyone to regulate you? And the answer is no, because there is no government. And if there is no government, this means that there's a possibility you can have external cost, also called third party cost or negative externality. So what do we mean by this? This basically means that if you are, so what is third party cost? There's a whole chapter on third party cost, but let's talk about it very briefly. So let's say a chemical producing firm makes chemical, and let's say you buy that chemical. So you are one party, you're the buyer. The seller is the second party who's making the chemicals. But let's say after making the chemicals, all the waste of the chemical are thrown into the river. So this means that the river is polluted, which means there's a third party cost. The third party is the society that will now basically is harmed because you have dumped the waste in the river. What you should have done is that you should not have done that. But in order to save cost, you did that, which means you are making the society suffer. And therefore, one of the problems that we say can happen in this economic system is that there's a possibility that negative externalities or third party cost or external costs, third party negative sort of external costs or externalities are found. How do you control them? Well, you need to have government to control them. But in this economic system, there's no government to begin with. So we believe there's no say in this case, Adam. In this economic system, government doesn't have the say, or government doesn't have the power to regulate this market. If rivers are a large source of water and food for us, which is basically this is a negative economic external cost. Exactly, Bilal. This will be an external cost for us. Make sense, Bilal? Does that make sense? Do I answer your question? Okay. Next up is, guys, again, these merit and demerit goods, and even like negative externalities, we will go into much more detail in the chapters to follow, but right now we're discussing them very briefly. One of the biggest challenges also happens is about merit goods. Merit goods are basically underprovided by private sector enterprise, while demerit goods like drugs and cigarettes and alcohol would be overprovided. So what are merit goods? We say merit goods are, let me explain a little bit of merit goods here. We say merit goods are those goods that will not only benefit you, so they benefit individuals plus society. Example could be, like education. Education could be example, or healthcare could be example. And the idea goes this, that when you look at merit goods, which are benefiting individuals and society in terms of like education and healthcare, this should be provided to people at a very low price. But what we see is this, that it's expensive or under provided. Why? Because if it's going to be expensive, not many people will be able to buy that. The whole private school argument that people are raising, parents are raising, they're saying, can't we make good schooling affordable? And the answer is yes, we should. Normally, in other parts of the world, government takes the responsibility. But in Pakistan, sadly, government is not taking responsibility because we have lack of resources or different priorities. Therefore, normally you will see merit goods would be underprovided. And guys, demerit goods, while merit goods are underprovided, demerit goods, let's say cigarettes or for example, what you call it, alcohol, which are basically goods that have a harm to society. Like for example, they harm not only individual, for example, you and I, who are, let's say, smoking cigarettes, for example, and society as well. If I'm smoking cigarette, there's a passive smoking that happens as well, which would mean they can sort of harm society. And you'll see this, they are over provided. On the other hand, they are over provided in the market. Why they are over provided? Because people are buying it. So the idea goes is that in this economic system, there's no government, and therefore we are underproducing merit goods, and we are overproducing demerit goods, and that could basically harm the society in serious manners. In serious manner. Okay, makes sense, guys? Another important case you will see the whole macroeconomics argument that we raise. The macroeconomic argument is this, that you need government to make policies, and if there's no government, there will be no policies, and if there are no policies, there could be a possibility of macroeconomic instability, which means there is no government to solve the problem of unemployment, to solve the problem of recession, which is kind of unemployment, or inflation, or even like low GDP. All of these problems require government's concerted effort. You don't see government to be here. And as a result of this, there could be long macroeconomic instability that can be found in systems where government is not there to begin with. Make sense? So free market economy can lead to what we call macroeconomic instability. There may be periods of recessions, which is basically unemployment with high unemployment and falling output, and other periods of rising prices and increasing output, which could lead to inflation. The lack of government could be a serious problem, because government is then trying to manage the economy and therefore trying to manage the issues of the economy. Make sense? Any questions? Any questions? Are we good to move on? So moving on, guys, last point is basically one of the problems we see in this also economic system is the idea that because people are trying to sort of take care about the self-interest, they become a lot more selfish, greedy, they chase materialistic things, and they care about the acquisition of power. These are tall claims, by the way. It may not be always true, but because we are always promoting self-interest, we're always promoting competition, we're always promoting I am better than you kind of a thing, or I should have a better car than you kind of a thing, then we are looking at issues of materialism, greed, and selfishness to happen. And a lot of time people are looking at depression is on a rise, individuals facing depression, and a lot of people blame the society for this as to the kind of competition that we live in. We are going to face this kind of issues of selfishness, greed, materialism, and so on. If people don't have the money in this economic systems, we assume, Bilal, we assume that if you don't have the money, then you don't have the ability to buy, then you might not be able to buy. This is how the system goes. And I mean, if you look at healthcare in countries where it's not free, if you fall sick, if you don't have money for the medicines, then you don't get treated, then there is a possibility that you die because of the fact you don't have the money. So we have a system where there would be a possibility that individuals will be seriously denied of the good. Okay, so guys, that's our discussion for today, which is basically pros and cons of free market economy. A lot of benefits we saw how, in an economic system like free market economy, it works automatically, it's very quick to make, demand needs to be met, There's competition, which is good because there could be possibility to lower prices, better products, and so on and so forth. And because everyone is working in maximizing self-interest, we can actually think of problem of scarcity to be dealt very, very well. But the fact that there is no government means there will be sometimes lack of competition, and monopoly power can come about, which could be harmful because they could become inefficient, they could charge you higher price, they could become exploitative. Also, the fact that there is a possibility of some people to become really rich and powerful means there could be unequal distribution of wealth, and therefore consumer sovereignty might be lacking. Also, we saw the negative aspect of free market economy in terms of externalities, in terms of demerit goods, in terms of merit goods not to be provided, and therefore it makes it undesirable. Lastly, we saw from a macroeconomic view, there is a possibility of sort of instability that can happen because there's no government to manage the economy. And also the fact that because everyone is chasing after maximization of self-interest, this economic system promotes, sometimes it's argued, promotes selfishness and greed and materialism and power, gaining power rather than giving it back to the society. So that's about it, guys.